Alright, welcome back, boys and girls. You can see that I've now almost completed all of my back stitches, but I want to show you how to tie off your back stitch when you're done. So I have not completed my red one yet. For my last red one, I'm going to go up through that hole where the knot is already in the back, and then come down to make my last stitch. Okay, so now I've completed on the front, I need to tie it off on the back. So what you're going to do is you're going to be tying a knot onto these strings back here. So you're going to take your needle and your string, and you're going to go underneath some of these strings that are right next to it. And that's going to make a loop. Once you have your loop, you're going to pull it tight, and that starts your first knot. And you're going to do that a couple times. So you're going to go under those strings to make a loop. Okay. Once you have a loop, you're going to pull this string back through the loop and pull it tight. Okay, and I'm going to do that one more time. So I need to make sure my needle is still on my thread. I'm going to go under, pull it through to make a loop. Once you have your loop, bring your string back through the loop and pull it tight. Okay, once you've done it a couple times, then you can cut it off and you'll see that your string is tied and it's not going to fall off anymore. So from the front it looks pretty, from the back we have all of our knots. Okay, now the next stitch I'm going to show you is the running stitch. The running stitch is the easiest stitch to do besides the back stitch. So again, you're going to have to put your needle and your string together. So put the string through the eye of the needle, and then you need to tie your knot back here. So crisscross to make a loop, put your end through the loop, and pull it tight. Okay, you're going to do that 2 more times. If you have a very skinny piece of yarn or string, and it seems like your loops and your knots are too small and they're going to pull through your holes, then you might have to do it 4 times. Okay, so it's just good to practice doing knotting. So I have a nice big knot right now. I think I should be okay. So you're going to take your string and you're going to put it through your hole that you want to start at. Okay, now for a running stitch, you're going to go to the next hole, pull it down, and then just like with the back stitch, you're going to come up through that next hole, but instead of going backwards this time, you're just going to go forwards. So I'm going to go forwards again, and you can see that I've now created this dashed line. Now my things are kind of spread apart, so I could tie this off and cut it in the back, or I can just make sure I have a really long piece of string so that it reaches all the way around the plate. And I've cut a really long piece of string. So I'm going to do that running stitch again, but this time I'm going to go in the opposite direction of the first one. So I'm going to start in this hole, pull it up, okay. Then I need to go to the next hole, pull it down, okay, come up through the next hole, but instead of going backwards like in the back stitch, you're just going to go forwards. And so you can see it creates this dashed line effect. So if you ever want to use dashed lines in your art, when you're doing some sewing or embroidery, you're going to use a running stitch. So the first one we did was the back stitch. Well, actually the first one we did was the whip stitch. That one went around the edge. Then we did the back stitch. Now we're doing a running stitch. So the running stitch just keeps moving forward. It never goes backwards. Okay, so I'm going to do this all the way around to make the rays of my sun. And then I'm going to show you one extra special stitch. It's the cross stitch. And I don't have it drawn on here, but I'll show you what that looks like with a different color thread. And I'll add it just kind of around my sun. A cross stitch kind of has an X shape to it. So anytime you might want to use an X shape on your art, the cross stitch may be good for you. Oh, and I only have 3 holes here. So what I'm actually going to do is add an extra hole, because otherwise I would not complete my dashed line. So I'm going to come up through this hole, and then I'm just going to add an extra one going down so that I can finish my stitch. There we go. And so it's good to know and keep in mind that you're going to probably want to have an even number of holes as you're doing this so that you can complete your running stitch. All right, so I have gone all the way around. I'm finishing my last running stitch here. And again, you're going to have to tie it off in the back. So you're going to be tying a knot in the back. This one is going to be a little bit more difficult because you don't have anything to tie it to. So once you have it all finished in the front, go to the back, and you can see that it's just kind of hanging out by itself. So this one, you're going to have to tie a knot similar to what we did before. So you're going to crisscross, make sure you have your loop, pull your string through your loop, and as you're pulling your knot, make sure you hold this one string that's coming up through the plate. So I have a string that's coming up through the plate. So I'm going to hold that one. I'm going to just pull the knot close around it. So I want to make sure my knot finishes close to that hole. Okay, so now my knot is close to that hole. I need to loop around again. So I make my loop, go through the loop, and again hold the string that's coming through the hole and pull tight so that they overlap. Oh, and I just ripped mine a little bit, and that's something you do not want to do. So make sure you're not pulling too tight, because then you're going to get a little rip like that. So pull a little bit less tight than I was doing. And I'm going to have to do it one more time. So loop around, pull it so that they touch. Don't pull too hard though, because then you're going to rip your plate. Okay, so now mine's attached in the back. I can cut off the extra, and I am all finished with my running stitch. The last stitch I was talking about is that cross stitch. And the cross stitch, again, you always have to start at the same. So you're going to get the string on your needle, and you're going to put a knot at the end. And for the cross stitch, you're going to be making X's. Okay, so it's going to be a crisscross. And this one's a little bit harder to plan out on a plate. But basically what you're going to need is 4 dots that are kind of in a square shape. Okay, so if you're doing a cross stitch on your plate, you're going to go 1, 2 next to each other, 3, 4. Okay, so I'm going to do it again. 1, 2 next to each other, 3, 4. So you're making little squares. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to do that all the way around. So I'm going to add a bunch of X's around my sun. Now, these can be bigger X's or smaller X's depending on how far apart your stitches are, but you want to do 4 that are in kind of a square shape, and you'll see why in just a second. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now that I have my holes, I'm ready to do my cross stitch. So I'm going to come up through a hole, just like starting on any of the other ones. Okay, this time I'm not going to go straight down. I'm going to go on a diagonal because I'm crossing them. So I'm going to go on to the one that is across or opposite of it. Okay, so now I've made my first line of my cross stitch. I then need to come up through one of these other holes, and then I go back down through the last hole. And the cross stitch then looks like a little X. Okay, so then I can hop over to this next one, go up through one of the holes. Okay, then you're going to go across, so not above, not straight over. You're going to go on a diagonal and go back down. Oops, there we go. Why is this stuck? Something is stuck for me. Okay, so right now I'm getting this weird loop in the back. So mine's stuck because I have a little tiny knot in my yarn. So I just want to make sure when I'm doing this that I'm pulling it carefully so that it goes all the way taut. Taut means that it's tight. Okay, so now in the front it looks good. I need to go up through one of my other holes and then crisscross back down. Okay, and that is your cross stitch. So I'm going to cross stitch all the way around, and once I'm all finished, then I need to tie it off. And again, tying it off is like you do with the other knots, with the other stitches. You're going to just tie it against the back of the plate, making sure you're not pulling too tight so that your plate doesn't rip. We don't want to rip our plates. So I'm almost to the last cross stitch, and I just want to show you real quick how to go ahead and tie this one off. If you don't tie them off, then your stitches are going to get all loose and fall apart. So you always have to make sure you tie off your string at the end of your stitches so that it all stays in place and your beautiful work does not fall apart. Alright, so I'm doing my last cross stitch. Once I'm done with that cross stitch, I should end up in the back, so I can turn this over. And you can see that I've kind of created this weird design on the back just with the way that I was going around the plate. Okay, so again, I'm not going to have a string that I can go under, so it's kind of like with the running stitch, you need to make a knot that's kind of close to the back. So you're going to loop it. So watch what I do. I'm going to cross them to loop it. Okay, then I need to go up through the loop to make a knot. And remember, you want to make your knot close to the edge of the plate, so kind of hold it so that it doesn't move, and make sure your knot is close to the plate. Okay, so again, you're going to loop it, make crisscross to make a loop, put your string through, and make sure your knots overlap at the bottom. And I'm going to do it one more time. So crisscross, make a loop, put it through the loop, and now I have a nice big knot in the back. I can cut off my extra string, and now I am finished. So that is how you are going to be sewing and finishing your challenge. You need to show me that you can thread a needle with some string. You need to show me that you can tie knots on your string and tie knots on the back of your plate. And you need to show me a few stitches. I want to see the whip stitch around the edge, see some back stitch, some running stitch, and if you want to challenge yourself, do some cross stitch in your design. Okay? Once you're finished with that, then all of the Fiber Arts Center will be open to you because I know that you had some practice with sewing. Awesome. Have a great day.